I have an empty house right now, and it's just new to me. And so I decided, after I have Truly, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just not. I'm just going to be a mom and see what that feels like. I don't know. People are good. People are open-minded, so much more than we would assume. That's just what I see. I think people are great, and I think people's minds are exactly where they need to be for us to be able to say, hey, this is our family, and you're going to find things that you really like about us.
Hi, besties. Okay, Christine Brown Woolley is literally achieving something that Robyn Brown wanted to achieve on her own, but she needed to have other people help her achieve that goal. What is that? Christine Brown is a best-selling author with the New York Times, #1 on nonfiction hardcover as well as ebook in 2 separate categories. Christine debuts in the second week at #1 on the New York Times best-selling list. This is awesome for her, honestly, and she deserves it. Absolutely deserves all the success, and I'm sure she is going to be celebrating and getting all kinds of attention for this, and that's amazing because her book has the capacity to touch millions of women, inspire hope while also sharing her story in her own unique way. And why I think this is even better is because when Becoming Sister Wives came out, it was a New York Times bestseller. They were on a hit show. It was written by all members of the family, but it was interesting because it was Robyn Brown, who wrote about this in the book. And I thought it was weird that she wrote about this in the book before it ever happened. But let me read this to you. Several years before I married Cody, when I was at an absolute low point in my life, I made a life list of all the things I wanted to accomplish. Since things were going so badly for me at that point in time, I allowed myself to dream as big as possible, change the world, meet Oprah, write a bestseller, and own a business. I look back on that now and think, be careful what you wish for because you might get it all. And then it may be something you don't want. I can never underestimate the positive impact of Sister Wives, but there are days when I wake up and say to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I want everything to go back to normal. She was so focused on and material accolades, celebrity, changing the world, almost grandiose dreams, and writing a bestseller. She dreamt about writing a bestseller before she ever wrote a bestseller. And to be clear, the book was a bestseller, but it took other points of view for her to get there. And she reminded everyone that she was the last in the place of the favorite sister wives. Being on a television show really altered my entry into the family and into a plural marriage. Sadly, during the first season, many of our fans cast me as a homewrecker out to destroy Mary, Janelle, and Christine's happy family. I try not to dwell on the internet commentary, but since I think it's important to interact with our fans, I can't entirely avoid it. There have been so many negative comments about me that it's difficult to shrug them off. People believe I have an ulterior motive and that I want Cody to myself and not because I love the family or the sister wives. People believe I'm manipulative and conniving. I usually place last in the favorite sister wife poll. It's bizarre that when she had the world at her feet and she was getting so much attention, all she could focus on was the negative. She achieved fame, financial security. She got the man. She had babies, and all she's bitching about is that people don't like her because they think she's manipulative and conniving, and she's not the favorite sister wife. She admits to manipulating her producer and tell them that they need to tread lightly, not to give America's women another reason to hate me. If the audience dislikes me, then we failed in our mission to convey the joys of the stability of our lifestyle. She meets Oprah, she writes her book, she gets everything she wants. And yet, even in that, she wasn't happy. And even though she wrote that people believed all she wanted was Cody to herself. At the end of the day, all she got was Cody to herself. And she wanted to write the bestseller, right? Christine's goals were very different than Robyn's. And what's really interesting is that in the chapter about celebrity for Christine, and I'm not going to reread it, but her biggest motivation for doing the show was not fame. It was not celebrity. It was not to meet Oprah. It was not to change the world. It was she had spent her entire life living in fear of the outside, living in fear of what people thought of her, living in fear of law enforcement, living in fear of her family being split apart. She had spent her life lying and having to lie to the people around her, and she was tired of living a double life. She wanted to be out in the open and show the world who her family was and not like they're not monsters. Like we are not these evil people that Warren Jeffs is. She wanted to help bring to light the community to reduce harm in a way. Her motivations were not based on fame, and they certainly were not based on the celebrity aspect or writing a bestseller like Robyn. They were more about so she could live in a more free world, so that her children could live in a more free world. And she spoke about how the show, while challenging and having to learn about the media training, she talked about learning media training through her work at Principal Voices, where she learned how to answer questions and just answer enough, but don't dig too deep into the surface, to give enough of an answer, but just don't go deep, which is what she's been doing for so many years. She's trained to just give you the high level. And she's at the end, she wrote, "Our decision to live openly has allowed our entire family to come into their own. I love meeting all the kids' friends, and I absolutely love taking my sister wives' children places and introducing them as my kids. I enjoy being open and being married to Cody, and we do many things as a married couple, and he can openly say we are all his wives. It's fun going places together and being recognized. People meet us and talk about us and about how we changed their minds and their perspective and families and relationships. I feel humbled and overjoyed at the response we receive about our family. People grateful that we opened our lives so they could see this plural family as a choice." Now, so Christine's motivations were more rooted in advocacy and rooted in helping be more transparent, even though to a degree that transparency was a bit of a lie. And in her system, she wasn't aware really how much of a lie it was. She was doing her duty, and she was at that time believed what her life was happy. When you read the book, you learn that some of those earlier days weren't the easiest. You learn that Christine, while she was saying these very positive things about what was going on in the family, behind the scenes, it was a lot darker and a lot, more challenging than they let on the show. The show had a motive, and that motive was to make people not hate polygamists. The other motive was to try to decriminalize it so that individuals wouldn't fear reporting abuse within their communities. Ultimately, their path forward, where they were going to try to say it was a civil rights issue and that polygamists are afforded the civil right to live their religion, that did not work. And instead, they decriminalized it based upon abuse. And that if people are living in polygamy at consenting and there's no other existence of abuse, the state of Utah will not prosecute them under a felony. It would just be an infraction, like a parking ticket or a parking speeding ticket. But if crimes did occur that were abuse, child trafficking, sex abuse, all of those, at that point, then it would be a felony, a second degree felony. So their work definitely opened up a conversation, but it also, sanitized a community that maybe didn't need to be normalized to begin with. For all that she's gone through and all facets of her life and all the things that she has said and done on this show and to the world, there are times when some things that she says are incredibly polarizing. People are like, "What are you thinking, Christine?" And then there are other times people absolutely love her. And she recognizes that her bubbly, happy disposition makes her easy to like and makes her an easy speaker for the family. And that conflict between Christine is really the reason why they got the show, because she was doing work in Principal Voices They were looking for a view of how to make it look like women were not being oppressed. And Cody was sort of given the show after the fact because of Christine's work. And I think in many ways, Christine understands how significant her role was in getting the show and how her advocacy and work with Principal Voices was the catalyst behind them getting the show. That I understand why she feels, in a way, a sense of ownership over the show. Not that it's her show, but she does say in her book that Cody always says that it was his show and the story was about him. And she never thought it was like that. She viewed it more as a family. It's hard to, like, in a system like that, you're this the show itself was a man and four wives, right? So he was the center of it and all the women revolve around the man. So maybe, yeah, the show is about Cody, but it wasn't really, and it still isn't. And I know we're not supposed to compare the women and we're really not supposed to make this about revenge. But sometimes when you've gone through a really, really, really hard time and you have had a very abusive ex who used you and abused you and used your children and threw them away, sometimes the very best revenge you can get is success, right? And the best validation you can get when you write a book is that it's a bestseller, a New York Times bestseller. In order to hit the list, you have to move more than 5,000 books in a week, which I know sounds wild because what, only 5,000 books? But, back in the day, that was a lot. Hardcover books, it's hard to sell that. Most books don't ever get to that 5,000. It's crazy if you think about that. But they also have to have not just 5,000, but then they have to meet certain other criteria. It's based upon also the impact of this within the other releases. We've seen other people that have been on the show get New York Times bestsellers. And certainly, if you are famous and you have a massive following behind you, you are more well suited and you have a higher chance of reaching the New York Times bestseller. I think for many people, this book and this achievement for her is just a benchmark for her and her continued independence. Regardless of what you think or feel about the show and what it did and how it harmed or how it didn't harm, or what you think about the exploitation that may or may not have occurred on a show when you're monetizing your family, or what you believe about polygamy. Christine's platform now is situated not to be about secrets anymore and more about honesty and openness. And while not all family members view own honesty and openness as a value, and while not all family members wish to put it all out there and share, she had the bravery to do that. And she's being vulnerable and exposing a lot about her life she never had to expose. If I can think of anything that I think is probably the most important in her book, from my perspective, especially when dealing with very conservative, fundamentalist religions like this, is her honesty in addressing sex. And I think it's a topic that is so taboo in this culture and even within fundamentalism in general, that her willingness to open the dialogue and discuss how painful her first experience was, how much she felt like she was hurt, that Cody didn't care, how emotionally disconnected she felt, how she felt like Cody didn't want to see her naked, he wanted her always covered up, speaking vulnerably about the heartbreak she experienced when she heard him having sex with the other women in the next room next to her. And really breaking down just how driven by sex and how selfish Cody was when it came to sex, that I think is a part of the show that we've never seen, but it's a part of this culture that's an important one to expose. A lot of people were shocked when they found out that Cody wasn't interested in foreplay and he didn't want to, give her a massage and he didn't care about her being, taken care of sexually. But that's literally what this culture is. The women are objects. I can't tell you how many women from this culture have described their first time to me and felt like they were raped. And years out of it, they use those exact words. Or they tell me about being taught as a child in their teens that they should not enjoy sex, that if they enjoy sex, they're a sinner and they should allow their husband to just take them. They cannot say no. They don't, and then they don't get to protest And if they enjoy it, they're taught to be they're sinners, right? So you shouldn't enjoy it, which is setting these women up to accept abuse in the bedroom. If you couple that with how she describes her first time and what Cody did, it's in line with their teachings. If you couple that with Robyn shaming her for not wanting to do things for Cody that she was willing to do, it's back to their teachings. And really, what she did with this book is she's ripping that whole conversation open. She doesn't have to tell you that this is what she was taught. She doesn't have to say this was marital rape. But for many of you that read it, that's what you felt. And what you realized after reading it is that this woman's been through hell. She's being extremely vulnerable and she's sharing the most painful part of her marriage and her life. And now she on her own has become a New York Times bestseller. And she on her own and her willingness to be vulnerable is what helps her get to there. Not just the fact that she's famous, but because she's vulnerable. And I know a lot of you have appreciated that about her book. As much as we go back and forth and we talk about the dynamics in the family and perhaps Christine's back and forth with Mary, or even her back and forth with Janelle, or her back and forth with Robyn and Cody, at the end of the day, all of the women are victims. All of them. Even Robyn. Even Robyn. And what Christine's book makes clear is that she's glad she's free from the control and the constraints that she lived through under Cody. And that while she believes Cody and Robyn are still like the best, and they're the soulmates, the way that she describes Cody and Robyn's marriage and how much Robyn does walk on eggshells with Cody, it really proves that even though Robyn won the husband, it was really the women who left Cody that won at life. Robyn can have a house full of things, but she, at the end of the day, still has a husband that is abusive, that is controlling, and that is an isolator and manipulative. She may be too, but in their world, Cody is the king and Robyn treats him like one so she can get what she wants. The real mark of a woman is standing up in the face of adversity, in the face of, if I do this, people might think I'm a fraud. And she did that bravely and she's done that boldly. And is sometimes, even if I don't agree with her, I commend her for this. So congratulations to Christine on beating the odds, being a best-selling author, a New York Times best-selling author, and proving that when your goals are advocacy and altruistic, you will amass people that cheer you on and are your fans, other than others whose goals are fame and money, like Cody and Robyn. This is a huge win for her. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.